The year is 1836. We are the unrecognized regional power of Morocco. Our people are struggling, less than a tenth of the population is literate, and our economy is insignificant compared to our imperial neighbors just across the Strait of Gibraltar. Our Sultan recognizes British and Spanish threats to our independence, and that there is little hope of surviving a military conflict when they come to subjugate our people and land. To avoid this, we must pick a side, either that of the Spanish, who occupy land that is rightfully Morocco's, or the British, who have their eyes set upon not only North Africa, but the entire world. The pertinent decision, the one for the benefit of Morocco, seemed to be the British. They'll be satisfied with the independence of Morocco to stop any possible expansion by the Spanish, and we may be able to one day persuade them to assist us in reclaiming our territory from Spaniard control. So, we establish a diplomatic connection with Great Britain and begin our path towards building a wealthier and better educated nation. Our nation's power is dominated by the Sultan, who operates with the assistance of landowners who hold the substantial keys to power. These landowners, wary of the imperial powers abroad, petition the Sultan to reform the military by establishing a professional army. Despite the antagonistic appearance of these reforms, the Sultan, in hopes of retaining his power, has no choice but to acquiesce to the demands. However, this presented an opportunity for the religious faction of the nation to grab power, and after the enactment of the professional army, find themselves positioned to become counsel to the Sultan. The British diplomat returns to Morocco with the offering of establishing ourselves as a member of the British market, giving us the likely protection of the British in case of foreign diplomatic plays, and the economic opportunities to buy and sell goods to the British market without paying their tariffs. Now, given the recent discovery of gold in Morocco, we can build gold mines and begin to properly utilize our new economic status. But the jubilation of our successful negotiations with the British is cut short, and the cost of seeking their protection materializes when they state their intention to subjugate our Mascarian neighbors to the east. While we may have preserved our independence, we abandoned any potentiality of unity between the people of Northwest Africa, and we are forced to witness our own transformation from being advocates of sovereignty to being complicit in the forced subjugation of our brother nation. To face the fact that in our quest for protection from imperialism, we became the enablers of imperialism, that the image in our own head of who we are differs so drastically from our actions. At least now, with Mascar subjugated, British attention is diverted from us to other parts of the world. So, as we must, we march on. We preoccupy ourselves with the prospect of riches, and build our economy by exploiting our land for natural resources and constructing factories in our cities. But all of this labor is dangerous work, which presents an opportunity for the religious faction to expand their power over Morocco through the establishment of charity hospitals. And so the religious faction sets up this infrastructure and runs these hospitals, but not necessarily out of care or compassion, but because it provides them with both power and influence. Political murmurs can be heard that the glory of the rising nation of Morocco should extend south to encompass the Western Sahara. The murmurs grow louder with the writing of a policy of colonial resettlement, and excitement grows as the people romanticize the prospect of settling new lands. Then, once this policy is enacted, the process of expanding south begins, as if to complete the transformation from a once fiercely independent nation to themselves a subjugator of peoples. But this new appetite cannot be fed with expansionism alone, but it requires the people's stomachs to be full. And so the construction for the production of wheat and food industries begins, which in turn raises the people's standard of living. But our new accomplishments are overshadowed by the peculiar nature of our insatiable appetites, which easily take for granted any newfound comforts, and will abandon the hope of happiness through complacency in exchange for dissatisfaction which orients us towards accomplishing greater goals. This quest to satisfy these appetites proves too great for the shrewd and diplomatic savvy Sultan of Morocco, who first began spanning these wheels of transformation, but now to take his place is a new ruler with a new strategy for meeting the demands of his people. He removes the landowners and the religious faction from directly administrating government affairs and ushers in a new era of rule through modernizing the nation, a plan backed by industrialists and the armed forces. The industrialists know well what's holding back the economic engine of Morocco, and aim to rid themselves of the system of serfdom by petitioning to enact tenant farming. To begin the shift away from people's preoccupation with serving others, and to move towards concern for oneself, that they themselves have a choice in their own interest, by choosing to work in farm or factory, for some benefit rather than being forced to toil the land for their lords. And, to the dismay of the landowners, the reform is enacted, opening up and freeing the people to work for their own advantage, and in turn allowing an invisible hand to guide their behaviors, but ultimately for the benefit of the industrial elite. Once enacted, people aim to work in factories rather than in fields, but educational qualifications are required for many of the jobs. While these people themselves may be stuck working jobs that can barely provide for their needs and barely satisfy their desires, they know that their children need not have the same fate. The industrialists know this is to their advantage, and partner with the religious faction to run religious schools to educate people so that they may work in the factories. And all the while, the nation of Morocco is becoming better developed, creating the means by which people will eventually utilize this knowledge. The economy begins to shift from the traditionalism of the past to a new system of interventionism, where those in power can exert their influence for their own benefit, and in turn, though seemingly unintentionally, for the benefit of the Moroccan people. But, as progress unfolds, the cycle of our appetites begins again, and we look towards the eventual reclamation of our rightful land from the Spanish. While taking back our territory is still distant, even objects afar motivate our actions now. Our goals, hopes, and desires drive us towards our successes, and often, if not properly prepared, will drive us to our failures. Accordingly, we notice that the Spanish are likely to be backed by the Italians in the case of war, and it would seem we can't count on the British if we initiate a conflict. So we have to begin our own diplomatic game of wining and dining the powers of Europe, so that one day we may, without interference, reestablish the sovereignty of Morocco. In all of this, over the last 30 years, the sultans have managed to retain their power, to keep their constituents focused on their own goals, their own struggles, rather than trying to seize power for themselves. And now, as the people's situations continually improve, who shall they hail? Their culture? Their God? No, none of them. The people shall cheer, "All hail the Sultan, he who pushes us forward, who God endows with the power to rule, our gracious and most enlightened despot." But, as always, celebrations are cut short by the anxieties that take hold of us, and once again we are faced with the uncertainty of the future, questioning whether we are able to sustain our own growth or if we will collapse under our own weight. Now, this may be mitigated by opening our borders to migration, but that won't resolve the ever-present danger of being able to defend ourselves from those who wish to take our riches, and to prepare us for fighting a great power to reclaim our lost land. Just like in life, what we face is unknown. We may succeed or we may fail, but these successes and failures shape us alike, and regardless of any particular outcome, we will transform. We will be born anew, and we will always face the insurmountable task of progress.